Hi, this is Earl Hall from The Earl Hall Show, and you're listening to GrokTALK. GrokTALk.
We are GrokTALK, brought to you every week, almost. We won't be here next week, by GraniteGrok.com and the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. Check out cnht.org. Visit us at GraniteGrok.com. We are on Facebook and Twitter. We are in lots and lots of places, and you can go to the website and check it out. Please do. We'd like to thank you all for hanging out on the live stream and listening to our program and checking us out. And we don't have any guests in the studio this week, but you can still see us pointing at each other and giving each other the finger, or whatever it is we do, those of you who know.
Be nice.
Actually, there's no bird flipping in here at all. Not even at our Democrat opponents. We just don't do that sort of thing. See, we're not the haters you think we are.
Just frantic hand signals when it's time to talk.
That's right, or time to shut up.
That would be Steve.
That's the case maybe. I'm like, I gotta go, we're in a hard break.
That never happens to me.
That never happens to you, no, not at all. I know you have a lot to contribute. We need another hour just for you.
Pete.
We weren't invited. Well, we were probably disinvited if we were ever invited to the Northeast Republican Leadership Conference Clam Bake.
Rhino Fest.
And, but Pete and Jemmy, the tech guy on the radio, was there, and now he's with us to share some information. Hey, Pete.
Hey, guys. Great to be on GrokTALK.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
So, you were at the Shindig?
Yes, I was. I showed up there on Friday. Got there extremely early on Friday. Actually, it was the first registered media there. Stayed Friday till just after the dinner. Came back very early Saturday, ran back home because I had some equipment failures because we were doing our radio show live there. Ran back, managed to get the equipment, well, not so much get the equipment fixed, but manage a workaround. Did the broadcast live from there and stayed through the Mark Stein speech before heading back home.
Well, that was a nice thing that you did.
Or is that me?
These two guys are just
We're
playing
having
with their
in-studio
noses.
hijinks, yes. I wasn't sure if it was me. I thought it was you. It might have been me. Oh, here we go. You wrote a couple of things, and you certainly had one piece that, the elephant in the room and the one that wasn't. And certainly that caught our attention, and it allowed us to write a couple of posts. But I think, I look at it as we're here, and we're sometimes taken with a great deal of salt, but you're certainly a smart guy outside of the state. You're a national-level blogger. You've got a syndicated radio show. And you made that observation, which people really can't dismiss here in the state of New Hampshire. So tell us about that, and what do you think it means going forward?
Well, it's funny about that observation because it relates to something happening in Massachusetts, which I'll mention in a few minutes. But the big fuss, of course, at the NLRC event was the Scott Brown speech. Day one, the place was crawling with media. Everywhere you went, there was media waiting to see what Scott Brown would say, and we all knew what Scott Brown was going to say. So when you went into the media room, crowded people, all dying to hear Scott Brown make his breathless announcement that he's forming the exploratory committee to run for the U.S. Senate out of New Hampshire. And he gave a nice little speech that was a very stirring speech. His wife was there, a very charming woman. His wife is one of his great assets. But the question that I kept hearing from people there was, is Scott Brown the right choice? You have plenty of people who were establishment-type Republicans. A lot of the Ron Paul types actually were not there. You only saw the single person from the Ron Paul group with a little table. But the question that people were asking, they weren't saying it all that loud, was, can Scott Brown win in New Hampshire? And the problem goes back to an event that we were both at, which was the big protest when Scott Brown gave his first big speech in New Hampshire in Nashua several months before. And just to set the stage for any of those listening who were not aware, very, very cold day. We were outside for 3 hours. There were so many people that you actually had a group of folks stomping down on the snow on the Nashua Common area so that more people could fit. There were about 80 to 90 people inside of the Brown event, and 300 people freezing outside for 3 hours. And these were people who bluntly said, because of Scott Brown's position on the Second Amendment, they will not vote for him in November. And the question becomes, are we being penny wise and pound foolish? You figure you get Scott Brown running in the race. It gives the race national prominence. There'll be some national money that comes in. Suddenly the media will take New Hampshire seriously. The Democrats will have to pour in money and play defense, which is all to the good. But the pound foolish thing is, if those Republicans, let's say a small percentage of Republicans decides not to show up to vote in New Hampshire because of if Scott Brown is the nominee, that means that state and local races will be deprived of those votes. And right now, you just had the paint tax passed. You were going on Granite Rock about all these things that are happening in New Hampshire. If the Democrats keep New Hampshire in a year that should be the big red wave, and by keep it I mean on the state level, the House and the Senate in New Hampshire, that's going to give your wonderful new governor the imprimatur to run forward. I mean, last month the Democrats ran away from a gun control bill because they were afraid it would cause them trouble. If they manage to hold the House after 2014, they're not going to be afraid of anything. So Scott Brown may bring some short-term advantages in the scheme of things, but in the long run, it could cost New Hampshire its state. And if you guys keep Democratic control, then where are we Massachusetts people going to run away to? We might as well head south instead of north.
You know, and it's something that we've all been talking about on Granite Rock, Pete, and I'm glad to see that you've brought it up. You know, there are rumors that the Tea Party here in New Hampshire, or the adherents to the principles of the Tea Party, because I don't think there's so much an organized Tea Party group anymore. But if there was to be a third party, you know, you'd hear the Republicans sneer, well, you'll lose. And my retort is, we may very well lose, but you won't win either, because that will siphon off just that small sliver percentage that is necessary in almost all districts, unless they're really plus 10 or really plus R's, you know, skewing heavily to one party or the other. The GOP has to win 50% plus one. I only have to persuade, for instance, a point and a half of those Republicans to stay home. And really, we're getting to that point where, with the Medicaid expansion led by Republicans for a more intrusive government, a more expensive government, enlarging government, no more limited government. I mean, it broke almost every single plank of the platform. When you see Republicans acting just like Democrats, moving the Democrat agenda forward, who do we have to vote for?
And I saw a very interesting piece of news this morning from the Liberty Crier. A Tea Party candidate won as a write-in. Let's not forget what the...
In Pennsylvania.
Yes. Let's not forget what the establishment did to Joe Miller when he should have been senator from Alaska. They allowed and encouraged Lisa Murkowski, the princess, to write in and eventually steal a narrow victory in the general in a three-way. Should never have happened, but the establishment simply has declared war on the Tea Party. They did so partway through the 2010 campaign, but too late to lose. They intensified it in 2012, and they declared war on the Libertarians at Mitt Romney's coronation, and they lost. And they're doing it now. And we're going to drive some of them from office, whether it lets Democrats in or not. We've had it.
Now, that's a good point, and it should be mentioned, and I'll bring up the big news out of Massachusetts, is Richard Tassay, a gay Republican who is a darling of the Republican establishment, very publicly came out and said he was not going to go to the Massachusetts State Convention, which is today, because of the party platform on gay marriage. And somehow I don't think he's going to get the same euphorium that the Tea Party did. I mean, it's basically the same thing. Suddenly you're abandoning your party over one issue, but it's the right issue, so people aren't going to complain about it. And this is a huge deal, and this is something that I think has to be solved right away, because it's my opinion, and I've said this before, that as a rule, if you always vote for the best possible candidate. Now, in the Massachusetts special election that Scott Brown ducked, Gabriel Gomez won. I was a Sullivan man. And Gomez is nothing like my idea of a good Republican. But the other choice was Ed Markey, who we would have forever. And I urged people, go out, you got to vote for Gabriel Gomez because we can replace him in 18 months, but we'll never get rid of Markey. And Gomez lost, and we got stuck with Markey. Now, I would encourage, if Scott Brown won the nomination, I would encourage people in New Hampshire, although I'm a Karen Testament person, that's the person I've endorsed for in the primary, to go out and vote for Brown because we need that Senate seat for a chance of the majority. But I don't know how many people are listening to me, but I would also encourage, and this is going to sound contradictory, I would also encourage the concept of a third-party candidate backed by the Tea Party simply to make sure that those people who would not take my advice and show up for Brown show up to vote on the state level. Because right now, and I remember, Mike, you said this very well after the 2012 election, the time to talk about taking over a party is not in the middle of a critical election. The time to talk about taking over the party and acting on it is after a critical election. And New Hampshire, I think the GOP should welcome a third-party choice for Senate if Senator Brown wins, simply because they need to get that turnout to take New Hampshire. I mean, I certainly understand your reasoning on the state level and your anger, but you're going to get worse from the Democrats there. And I don't think the state GOP has really thought this through. Now, the NLRC event, it was a nice event, and and this is going to sound a little odd, I'm going to give props to Jennifer Horn, who gave me an interview and treated me very well while I was there. But in the end, the important people are the voters and turning out and actually winning. If the goal is to win, you want to nominate the candidate that's going to draw the base. If you don't draw the base, you don't win. And it's actually funny because at my blog, thetechguiblog.com, we have something up called the Poison Poll. And what the Poison Poll is, it's a list of 2016 candidates. And the question on the poll is, which of these candidates, if they are nominated, will you stay home for rather than show up to try and stop Hillary? Right now,
Pete,
Chris Christie is winning that poll.
Pete,
yeah.
That poll's not good enough. I'll tell you why. I'd select half the candidates on the list, but
you can pick more than one, and you can vote for more than one.
But only one at a time. I can come back. Is that right?
You can come back and vote for more than one, because all we want to do is determine we cannot afford to lose in 2016. After seeing what's happened with Ukraine, after seeing what's happened with Obamacare, we cannot afford to lose in 2016. If you get a Hillary Clinton, then these changes are permanent and this country's gone, in my opinion. So what we have to do as a party is nominate somebody that will turn off the least amount of our base. I'm thinking, frankly, that and this is not my choice for who I would like, who is my favorite candidate, but I think that a ticket with Rand Paul and Scott Walker, with either one of them on top, would probably be the best draw.
Okay, we're going to talk about that when we come back. We got to take a 60-second break. Stay there. We'll be right back. This is Grok Talk.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Senator Jeanne Shaheen said, if you like your current health plan, you can keep it. That's not true, Senator. 22,000 New Hampshire citizens have been kicked off their insurance plans. Hospitals in Rochester, Concord, and Portsmouth, they aren't allowed to provide care under the exchange. Senator, you were wrong in your comments. You should apologize for your misleading remarks. I'm calling Senator Shaheen at 750-3004 and telling her I want my doctor back. You should too.
Paid for by SaberPac.org, not authorized by any candidate or candidate committee.
Grok Talk.
And this is Skip Murphy with my co-host Steve McDonald and Mike Rogers. This is Grok Talk, a production of GrokTALK.com, New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site. And we have one of our most favorite Grok friends on the line with us, That would be Pete Ingemi, a.k.a. Da Tech Guy, who is also on Da Radio. And Pete, thanks again for coming on the show with us.
No problem at all. In fact, as soon as the show is done, I'll be skipping over to my studios at WBNW in Needham, Massachusetts, to do our show, to Tech Guy on the Radio, from noon to 2, and we hope all of you Groksters are listening while you're at the event. Have your portable radios or your smartphone and give me a listen, and give us a call at 888-9-FEDORA if you want to opine.
Well, and I hope folks do that. We were talking about the NHGOP sending messages and candidates, and it's the conventional wisdom is that you vote for your favorite candidate during the primary, and you're supposed to go ahead and vote for the party candidate in the general, no matter who it is. And I've gotten to the point now, Pete, where I don't want to do that anymore. Certainly I want to vote for the candidate I think that is best in the primary. There's no doubt about that. But when I look at what the elected leaders of the NHGOP are doing here, it's very hard to separate the Republican chaff from the Republican wheat, because they all campaign like conservatives, and then lately we've been seeing them not voting like such. And again, it's the rogue Republicans that in the state Senate that gave us Medicaid expansion. And when you measure them, and we're all techies and engineers at this end, and you obviously are a tech guy, a.k.a. Tech Guy. Uh-huh. We have to look at results, not what's said, not what's written, not what the motions are and the hand-waving and all that, but at the end of the day, what got accomplished. Did it work or did it not? That's how engineers think. And I look at what these guys did, and I look at what's some of the main tenets of republicanism. Limited government. Well, that means a small government, an inexpensive government, doing a few things and doing them exceedingly well. Medicaid expansion is not one of them. It's helping the Democrat agenda expand Obamacare. We look at dependency and self-reliance. So self-reliance is supposed to be part of the party platform. This is encouraging dependency, and I can go on and on and on, and then Steve is going to get mad at me again for not shutting up.
Because your question's too long. Hurry up.
See what I mean?
I see what you mean, but the point is that you have, when you have candidates who do this, you have to make them pay a price, and the place to pay that price is the primary.
Well, the problem,
especially on the state level, because let me tell you something. As a person who comes from a state which hasn't seen a Republican majority in the House or Senate in my lifetime, and I'm going to be 51 this year, I'm telling you right now, you do not want to return the Democrats, because it's like that scene from the Big Bang Theory, where Leonard says, "Yes, I have to get all of my satisfaction from strangers like you because I have this problem, that problem, and that problem." But then he points at Sheldon and says, "But he's worse." The first thing you have to do, because you have the Democrats in charge over there, the first priority has to be to beat those guys. And it's a little different with, like, say, the Richard Tisset story I told a little earlier, the former lieutenant governor candidate who decided to undermine Charlie Baker and denounce and skip the GOP convention today in Massachusetts. If we lose the Tisset seat, if the Massachusetts 6th District voters decide to stay home and donors decide not to give nationally, we're still going to have the GOP House. If we vote out John Boehner, if let's say we decide en masse that if we don't defeat Boehner in a primary, and if we end up Stephen Winter loses, who's his opponent, and we ended up voting en masse for the Democrat and getting rid of Boehner, you would still have a Republican House. But if you guys lose the House and Senate this year in New Hampshire, the New Hampshire House and Senate, then in an election year where you're going to have Mrs. Clinton and we're going to see the same, the first woman president, just like we saw the first black president, how did that work out, folks? Voting based on gender or skin color rather than accomplishments, you're going to get disaster. So first things first, those guys should be primaried in your state. If they don't lose the primary, you got to get rid of the Democrats first. Once you get rid of the Democrats and have a majority that you can keep, then you can stop primarying these guys again and running more and better conservatives.
Okay, but Pete, the problem is that what a conservative is in Massachusetts is not the same thing as a conservative here in New Hampshire. Now, let me put three different issues on the table. Jean Shaheen and Scott Brown. They're both pro-choice.
That's true.
They are both pro-gun restriction.
That's true as well.
They both voted for Dodd-Frank.
That's
Each
true as
one
well.
of those issues points to a raft of other stuff underneath that. So Scott Brown has shown that he's not willing to vote to keep a limited government. He's not good on the life issue, and he's willing to restrict the liberty and freedoms that are encapsulated shall not be infringed. So and there's a whole raft of other things I could probably point to that are very close to. I can't count on him to vote as a Republican according to the principles of the party. And on those three issues alone, there is no difference between him and Jean Shaheen. So now I will echo Hillary Clinton by saying, what difference does it make?
Majority Leader Harry Reid.
He got you there. All right. That's hard to fight.
How many Republican bills got passed from the Republican House that Harry Reid did not bring up for a vote? How many times during the shutdown?
Skip's got this look on his face like, oh, crap. I didn't think of that.
You played the Trump card, and there's another one I wouldn't vote for.
Harry Reid is Barack Obama's shield. He is, if you'll pardon my saying so, he's Barack Obama's cojones. He's been protecting Barack Obama. Now, I agree with you on all those things, and I have argued very strongly that Scott Brown doesn't belong running in New Hampshire. I wish he would run in Massachusetts. I think he could beat Ed Markey. I think he could have beaten him in the special election, and I think he would have beaten him this year. And he's probably as good as we can get for now in Massachusetts. But in New Hampshire, you have so many other better candidates. I mean, like I said, I support Karen Testament. I think Karen would give wonderful satisfaction as a senator for New Hampshire, and I would urge all New Hampshire residents to vote for her in the primary.
Yeah. We have not yet given an endorsement just as yet, but certainly I think all of us in the room really do like Karen, and I do believe that philosophically she matches up more closely with us than anybody else in the race thus far.
And you can tap her on the shoulder anytime and ask her a question, and the answer will be in line with her philosophy. She doesn't have to think what her philosophy is before she answers.
Right, exactly right. But it's up to New Hampshire to make that point. And frankly, what I would do if I was the right in New Hampshire, right now you have 4 other people in the field besides Brown. You have Karen Testament, you have former Senator Smith, you have Andy Martin, who may not count, and you have Jim Rubens. Now, Rubens may actually be to the left of Senator Brown, from what I understand.
Oh, he is.
So Rubens you might want to keep in there just to get some of the Brown vote out. But with Testament and Martin and Smith, you might want to trim that by 1 or 2. So that the conservative has a full line on Brown. In fact, the thing that I'm afraid of, frankly, is that the left will decide, because it's an open primary, to cross over.
Correct.
And either vote for Brown en masse in order to make sure Brown wins, or decide who is the weakest candidate out of Martin, Testament, Smith, Rubens, and Brown, and vote en masse for that candidate.
They do that all the time. They've been doing
because
it for years.
that's how you ended up with Todd Akin. I mean, imagine what would happen if the Democrats actually figured out who the weakest candidate of that field is and supported him.
That would be Andy Martin, who basically hardly any Republican is going to vote for anyways. He doesn't even rise to the level of gadfly.
They'd have to vote for the next weakest opponent who might actually have a chance of winning, because while the Democrats and independents who are Democrats could vote for an Andy Martin candidate, since that's not going to be enough votes to overturn the Republican base that'll turn out to vote against Brown, you're going to have to go with somebody else. Whoever the second least likely candidate is, that's the only really good shot they have if they want to tilt it one way or another. Or like you said, maybe they just go vote for Brown knowing that it'll affect down ticket in the general.
The question is whether they believe their own propaganda. Do they believe that Scott Brown is actually the best candidate to win? And we don't know how the Democrats actually think. We don't know what their fears are.
They've been attacking Brown nonstop for months.
Yeah, they are afraid of him. Go on.
So that's where it could go. We don't know what's going to happen, but it's up to New Hampshire Republicans to make the best possible choice, and then again to make the choices that are necessary. But in the end, it's all our own fault. And I say this in Massachusetts over and over again. it is our own fault if we let bad people get in government because we vote, and we always get the government we deserve. Of course, in New Hampshire, you have the buses running people in to Keene that you guys have been
We
writing
get the
about.
Government that Massachusetts college students deserve.
Yep, I mean, that's basically what happens. And if the people don't care, if the people aren't, and your previous guest was talking about Benghazi, if the people do not care enough to stomp this out, you're going to get more of it. Anything that isn't discouraged is encouraged, and Vladimir Putin is proof of that.
Yeah, I think you're right. And, I sit here somewhat resignedly going, drat. Because I want to be able to vote for somebody that I can trust. I've been saying for quite some time, my mantra has been consistency builds trust, which yields votes. And I've been telling the GOP this for months now, and it just seems to fall on deaf ears.
Well, shame on you for being resigned before the primary. Until the primary is, and I would say this again to all the listeners, until the primary is done, it doesn't matter what conventional wisdom says. You get out and you work as hard as you can. I recorded my subscription commentary this week in a cemetery because I was talking about the conventional wisdom that all those dead people in the cemetery thought of 100 years ago. Conventional wisdom is absolutely correct. Right up until the point it's not. Remember Sochi? We thought that the big news out of Sochi was going to be, we're sending Billie Jean King to show Vlad Putin that we're upset about him and gays. And then instead, the Olympics were a success, and now Putin owns Crimea and is about to take eastern Ukraine. Conventional wisdom, it doesn't matter what the media says. The media is just spinning for the left, as they always do. It matters what we do, and that's what we got to get out there. We have to do.
All right, Pete, we're out of time. Can you give us some contact information, please?
Okay, you can read me at thetechguyblog.com. That's DATECHGUI blog.com. And I urge the Granite Rock listeners to take part in our poison poll today. You can listen to me on The Tech Guy on the radio. We're live noon to 2 on WBNW. Is probably the best station to get from New Hampshire. That's 11:20 a.m. You can find that on TuneIn. It's replayed at 11 p.m. at night and all week from noon to 2 on the 405 Media. You can catch them online. And I would encourage everybody, because I'm a shameless capitalist, to hit the tip jar and consider subscribing, because all the live media I do, from the NLRC to live at CPAC, is paid for by donors like you. I need 61 more subscribers at $20 a month. That'll take care of my mortgage and expenses for the year. And don't forget to catch our magnificent 7 writers. I have 7 great bloggers, actually now 9, who are writing for me on a daily basis.
All right, Pete, I got to cut you off. We got to go. Thanks for being on the show. We'll talk to you again soon. My name's Steve McDonald. I'm here with Skip Murphy and Mike Rogers. This is GrokTALK, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Grok TV.